You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency?
Hey guys, Lance here with Monster 911. Good to be with you again. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I just wanted to take you along with me here. I'm just walking down my drive this evening. The sun is setting, and I'll turn it. The sun's setting back there, and it's really a beautiful day. Little on the cool side though. Wind was whipping up here. I think the warmest it got about 40s. And next week is going to be our Arctic blast. It'll be in the teens. But, you know, we're a lot better off than many of you right now that's about 3 or 4 feet in snow. So I'm not complaining too much. So many of you on the last series of shows seemed to like it with Reverend Dave. I thought it was interesting. Again, I wanted to give you something different, something that not many people were talking about. But I thought that there was an absolute correlation. Everything kind of comes back around to ultimately what we're discussing. And in my mind, personally, good and evil. And with the craziness going on in the world domestically, internationally, it really boils down to good and evil in my mind. So how that can correlate to cryptids is that I think many of us going out into the woods, going out in this thick stuff right here, going out over there, you just never know what you're going to come in contact with. More than likely, you're going to come in contact with wildlife that naturally lives out in the woods, but also man. Man is one of the most dangerous, quote-unquote, animals. I don't mean that literally, of course, but that you're going to encounter out in the woods. I think very few times are you really going to encounter a cryptid, but you still need to be on your toes and on your guard when you do. But anyway, I wanted to do that segment because if we're going to be safe, all of us as a community going out, you need to know all the possibilities of what could exist out there when you go out there. You need to know the what ifs and have some level of scenarios that you can go through. You know, if this happens, what would I do? If that happens, and you need to kind of rehearse this. Not that you need to be totally paranoid, but you need to rehearse those things to be safe. Come back home safely, everybody. So that's why I wanted to do the show. And many of you liked it so much that I talked to Reverend Dave. I think we're going to have him on a few more times for sure in 2023. So that's exciting. And so I appreciate all the comments. And due to the comments, we did a part 3 and a part 4. And he agreed to it, so we're looking forward to that. And, you know, real quick, if, you know, I appreciate the comments so much. I try to get as many comments as I can. When I do it, I'll hit like 10 or 15 comments. I'm going to try to hit a lot more and answer a lot more of you guys. Sometimes it's hard, depending, because it's usually late at night when I start doing it. But I'll try to answer a lot more. I appreciate it sincerely. So I'll really make an attempt to answer a lot more of the comments that you guys leave. And you guys are amazing. Just a lot of very thoughtful, great questions that you guys have. So just keep them coming. And if you'll answer someone else's comment or comment on someone else's comment, that just helps the show grow more. That's just the way the Google algorithms work. So I appreciate that very much. What we have in store for you this year, we'll get to the show here in a second, real quick. I won't talk too much longer, is that we've got some really cool video. I think we put out a questionnaire some time back that you guys really like. The part that you really like on the show is me interviewing guests, which I love doing. Absolutely. I learned so much. The people are fantastic, and I really want to help them cope, learn, and realize that they're not alone. There's thousands like them. So that's the part I do enjoy. Another part that I enjoy, though, is what I want to know if you would like is me going into the field. staying the night, going to a location, filming as much of it as I can, and taking you along the way. Kind of like a documentary. So if that appeals to you, let me know in the comments. I'm all ears. I want to do it. I'm willing to do it. And I've got a real cool show coming up soon with a Mr. Stone I think you'll like. So it'll be shows like what you'll be seeing soon with Mr. Stone. So when you see it, let me know what you think. I appreciate it. In the meantime, this January, February, I will be out in the field doing some filming. One's going to be with Wiley Dave in Western Oklahoma. We're going to discuss at a little bit more in-depth length on the encounter he had with the dogman creature in Western Oklahoma. And another feature of that while we're out there is we're going to talk about the close encounter he had with a UFO. Now, when I say close, it was close. And he actually had another UFO encounter at a different location, though. And we're going to get into that and what he saw. So we're going to really sit down with him and draw out some of the details. On both occasions, there was an eyewitness, and he'll describe what the person that was with him, what they did. One person that was with him the first time has since passed away, so I really couldn't talk with him. And then the second person does not want to be on camera. They don't want to. I tried. So it's just Dave's firsthand account, but he'll be telling us what the person did that was with him on both accounts. I think you'll want to hear that for sure. We're going to head back here. This is what it looks like at the end of my drive here, across that railroad track over there. When you hear the train in the background, there's the train track right there. That's how close it is. That land over there on the other side is wildlife management hunting, about 12,000 acres. So it's really nice. I can just go over there and fish or hunt throughout the year. So yeah, let me know. We're going to be doing some filming. I know you haven't seen a lot from me in the field doing it, but it's going to be coming, and I think you guys will really like it. If you want to see me do some more of that in the field, just leave a comment. So today's show is a really good show. A friend of mine, a fellow investigator, and actually podcaster. I've been wanting to do an interview with him for the longest time. He is from Oklahoma, native Oklahoman. His name is Chuck Schlabs. And he's probably one of the best investigators that I know, very thoughtful in his investigations, and he has some of the best prints casted that I've seen. And when I say that, I mean with dermal ridges, metatarsal break, amazing. And the areas that he's got some of these prints, I know exactly where he's attained them, and it's just amazing. You really have to be a sleuth to get good tracks. I always say it's a lot of luck to get a good track, but you have to be you truly have to use your investigative skills and be a sleuth. And that's what he's done so well. So I've been waiting to do an interview with Chuck, and we finally hooked up, and I was able to work our schedules together. So I think you'll really like the interview that Chuck and I had. In the meantime, guys, be safe, have fun out there, but also be alert. Tell everybody where you're going. Until next time, this is Lance with Monster 911, and let's go now for the interview that I had with a good friend of mine, Chuck Schlabs.
Well, Lance, it's great to be on your show. We've known each other for a pretty long time, and what's really cool about you and I is we kind of grew up in the same kind of area.
Yeah.
And in fact, I work a lot around part of the country that you're from, and had some.
Yeah.
I've had some crazy stuff happen to me out there in the oil patch. I work at night. And one of the locations that I go to every night is is only a couple miles away from the park out there. My
Oh,
mind just went blank.
are you saying in Western Oklahoma where I grew up?
Yeah.
Okay, we can. You
In
don't
the
have to get.
Watonga area.
What, say that again.
Watonga area?
Yeah,
Isn't
I
that
grew up.
right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, my brothers and I, my dad. That was the last park in which my dad retired. I think we were there 28 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the last park. He was in the Park Service in Oklahoma Recreational Department,
Right.
and so yeah, we had some interesting things happen in the park,
Right.
but it was more or
Well,
less.
there's the. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it was more or less my brothers, Bill and Lane, that had those experiences. I'm surprised I hadn't, but yeah, even outside of Watonga. But please go ahead.
Well, that park is one of the locations I go to is only probably 5 or 6 miles from there,
Oh,
and I work at night, so I have to go by this particular spot, this particular area, 3 times a night, and to check pressures and fluid levels and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do out there. But I've had a pretty odd experience there one night. I had 3 whistles whistled at me at approximately 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and as soon as I heard it, I knew exactly what it was. I've heard that kind of stuff before out in the woods, but
yeah.
I decided, maybe I should just before I plug all these numbers into my laptop. Maybe I should drive on down the road a little ways because I'm here by myself, and it's I didn't want to stay there after hearing those whistles.
Well,
And
it's kind of like this, and you've heard this too, Chuck. It's almost like everybody is an armchair quarterback and 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but when you actually get
Right.
in a circumstance in which you're by yourself in an area, and that area, it doesn't look like it from the air or just driving around the day, but you can go down in those canyons that's pretty creepy and
Oh, yeah.
and really thick fast. And that's kind of what you're made of. It's as Wally Dave would say, you can't stuff someone with a 2x4 trying to go somewhere. They say, oh, these things are just folklore, and yeah, well, come on with us and you can go, and I got a shower to go to. I got a wedding shower, and I got my family's reunions. I got to get, there's something that always comes up.
Sure. That's happened to me quite a few times with trying to get people to go out with me, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But going into how I actually got into all this, number one, I was fascinated by the subject of Bigfoot back when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I went to, my mom actually allowed me to go see a movie called Bigfoot, The Legend of Sasquatch, back in the 1970s, I think, early 70s. And surprisingly, my mom allowed me to go see a movie like that at the age I was. But she did, and she knew that's what I was interested in. And I watched the movie, and there were a couple things in the movie that really stood out to me. And, it was like any kind of Hollywood show. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that they added to it, but for the gist, I mean, I wanted to see one after watching that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought I would have to go up north somewhere, California or Oregon or even Vancouver or someplace like that. I always thought that I'd have to go that direction if I ever wanted to see one. So, after a period of time, of course, I was going to school, and the other things crossed my mind other than Bigfoot, and got interested in sports and all that kind of stuff. And I had that in the back part of my mind that, I was always interested in it. So when I got married and had my son, me and my son used to sit up and watch the Not Finding Bigfoot people.
That's what we call it too.
Yeah, and so we got really interested in that, and we found a flyer on a 7-Eleven store that the Finding Bigfoot people were all going to come to Oklahoma.
Mm.
And they came. This was in 2014, I think, is when they were here.
Okay.
And so my son and I actually went to see them at the town hall meeting, and they had it there in Oklahoma City, or on the outskirts of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Where the Express Ranch is. They have a big Clydesdale barn there, and that's where they were doing the town hall meeting.
Oh, okay.
So we went to the town hall meeting, and we pulled up there, and I'm telling you, Lance, I think my mouth hit the ground, because I bet you there were over 1,000 people there.
Good night. Whoa.
I thought to myself, why are all these people here? And what are they doing here? Because are they trying to spread their fan base, or that?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what they were doing here in Oklahoma, and so it was a pretty cool experience for me and my son, because when they finally showed up to start doing the meeting or whatever, they all 4 of them came up to me and my son and talked to us, and I just thought that was cool as all get out.
Yeah.
And so. But the most important thing that kind of struck me was there was this great big tall Indian guy that was in line with us, and I looked over at him, and he had this 16-inch track he was holding, and I thought, man, that is really cool. So I walked up to him and I said, "Hey," I said, "Where'd you get that? I'd like to have one of those." And he just started laughing at me. And I'm thinking, okay, now why is he laughing at me?
Right.
And he said, well, actually, he said, we got this on the Canadian River.
Huh.
And I was like, what? I think my jaw dropped again, and I think I probably had, my mouth was probably full of Chad or little rocks or something, because it was dragging the ground at that point.
Yeah.
And he laughed at me again. He said, well, the crazy part is the one that we're chasing now leaves an 18-inch track. And I was like, you're kidding, right? And he said, no. He said, that's what we're doing. And so at that point in time, my mind was kind of scrambled about the fact that, we have Bigfoot here in Oklahoma. Didn't realize it, didn't know it. And that's what got me started. And
that was in 2014?
2014.
Okay.
And from that point on, I kept my eyes open at all times and watched and listened and looked for evidence and stuff like that. Well, I worked for a company here in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, and I drove a truck for them at night. And I'd been driving nights for quite a while. And my dispatch early one morning, probably around 6 o'clock, they sent me on this location. This is November of 2015, so a year after I had met all the bigwigs.
Okay.
And so I went to this location. I'd been there hundreds of times. I had never ever experienced anything odd, never heard any weird sounds or any of that in this area. And I went out there and I pulled up on location, and this area was on the Cimarron River, which I actually live in a pretty good spot, because on the south side of me I have the Canadian River, and on the north side of me, I have the Cimarron. So I have two. I'm in between two rivers, so there's a lot of water and stuff in this area, and so I'm kind of lucky.
Yeah.
So I went down to this location. I pulled up. It was just starting to get a little bit of light outside, so I could see. This was in November, probably the second or third day of deer season. And I pulled up on location, jumped down out of the truck, and as soon as my feet hit the ground, every hair on my arm and every hair on my back stood up straight. And I thought, oh, something's not right. And I thought to myself, I wasn't thinking Bigfoot or anything like that. I was thinking there's probably a deer hunter out here, and my sixth sense is kicking in, and I'm sensing that there's a hunter here, and maybe I need to walk around the location a little bit before I start doing my job so I don't get shot by this guy who's hunting here.
Yeah, right.
That was my mindset. And so I looked around. I walked around the location. Never saw anything. Never heard anything. So at that point in time, I was thinking, man, I must be really tired from working all night. I'm imagining stuff. So I went ahead and started the job. I got all my stuff, equipment running and everything, making sure everything was good. And I hopped in the front seat of the truck to write out a ticket for the job that I was doing. And out of the corner of my eye, I see movement right in front of me. And I looked up, and to try to put a scene on what I was actually looking at, there was a sand embankment right there, and there was an old dead cottonwood tree that stuck up by this sand dune. And you know this area pretty well because in Oklahoma we have those red sand plums, and they're wild and they're everywhere.
That's right.
And people make jams and jellies. Well, there was a whole bunch of sand plum bushes that were kind of sitting right there where this tree was, this dead tree, and where the sand embankment was. And when I saw the movement, I looked up over to where this area was at, and he was probably 30, 40 yards from me, and I was looking right at him. He was standing behind this old dead cottonwood tree, and he was peeking around one side of the tree looking at me.
Were you still in the truck? Were you outside the truck?
I was in the truck.
Okay. Okay.
And immediately I got my cell phone and I picked it up and snapped a couple pictures. And I laid my phone back down, and I sat there and stared at this thing for probably a good minute. I never saw him blink. Never saw any movement. It was almost as if I was looking at a statue. Completely still, made no noise, nothing. And so after staring at this thing for a little bit, I decided, you know what, I must be really tired because now I'm hallucinating. And so I decided, you know what, I need to get back to the shop anyway. This is my last job. So I got down out of the truck and put all my equipment back on the truck and started to drive off. And when I started driving off, I looked over there one more time, and he was gone. Never saw him leave. Never saw any movement. Never heard anything. He was just gone.
Wow.
And at that point, Lance, I knew exactly what I had seen.
Yeah, that's incredible to not, I don't know, it sounds just very simpleton, but it's incredible that something that large can be so still for that long.
Yep.
And just not even blink an eye. I mean, I'm always amazed and of
so many of these encounters that people witness, and just that alone demonstrates intelligence and self-control.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, what happened next was of course, when I got to the yard and parked my truck, I was on cloud nine because I'd been wanting to see one of these things for years and years and years. And here it was, I just seen it that morning.
Mm.
Of course, I ran into the company, and all the guys were standing around, and I was showing them the picture, telling them what I'd seen, and I was on cloud nine. They knew I was happy about something, and of course they all laughed at me and called me a kook and all this kind of stuff. Of course, I didn't have to prove it to anybody. I proved it to myself, which is basically what I wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I, at the time, all this had taken place. I had been listening to Sasquatch Chronicles a lot.
Mm.
And at the time, Bob Garrett and those guys were down in Southeast Texas at the Sam Houston National Forest down by Huntsville, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to start doing expeditions down there. And so they gave a contact number on Wes's show, and so I contacted them and asked them if I could join up. And of course, I had to go through an interview process and all this, and they called me back a couple of days later and said, "You're in." And so my first sighting, first encounter was in November, and December and January, in February of the following year, which would have been 2016, I went to the Big Thicket and down in Texas with Bob Garrett, his whole crew, and you and I both have this really good friend, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Sean was actually my guide on the very first trip that I went on.
Oh,
he was
okay.
my guide, and that's how I met Sean.
Okay.
But that event, going down there to the Big Thicket, changed me forever, because I had multiple sightings down there. I casted my very first track down there. Got a hair sample while I was there. Collected audio. I had put up audio recorders around our campsite and caught some amazing audio. When I come back from that, Wes wanted me to come on his show on Sasquatch Chronicles, which I did. I'd never done anything like that before.
Okay.
So I did a show with Wes and two other guides that were with us down there. And, from there, it just, things just kind of opened up for me, and I started doing research here on the Cimarron River, doing some stuff on the Canadian River, and began to realize that these things are all around us. And you can go just about anywhere and find them. I've been all over Oklahoma. I've been in Texas. Went to Kentucky, Tennessee, to Land Between the Lakes. Did an expedition there. I've been to Alabama. Been to Arkansas. I've been to a lot of different places. I've been on 4 different expeditions. Just got through with an expedition about 3 weeks ago. Me and Mary Fabian from Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project.
Mm-hmm.
I've known Mary for several years. I've actually been on 2 expeditions with her, and her and her sister and 2 other people came in from Pennsylvania, and we spent a week in Honeby and had some really good activity there about 3 weeks ago.
That's great.
Got screamed at several times.
Wow.
And had rocks thrown at us at the cabin. that we stayed in, and so we had quite a bit of an experience there here in Oklahoma, and I love that area.
It's
they're
beautiful.
always there, and they always, if you stay there long enough, they always show up.
Yeah,
And,
that's the place that we had a lot of activity in our deer camp year after year, and we
Right.
always went to the same spot out there at Three Rivers,
Right.
and it was literally next to a well-known creek. And it was incredible because every year it's like, okay, what are we going to have going on this year? And what was really interesting is that when they completely mowed down all the timber in that area, which was about due because it was nice and mature, we went to another area and we had activity there, which was, as the crow flies, it was probably about 2 miles, 2.5 miles, which is nothing. But we had a lot of activity there as well. And that wasn't even near a creek.
Right. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I actually casted the very first print on Sean's property.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. And what I thought was really cool, and you have one of the best casts I've seen of this, has the dermal ridges. Am I correct?
Yes, going straight up and down.
Yeah, I would love to in person see that. I think I saw some photos that our buddy showed me, and
Right.
but what's really interesting about that print or that area is that my brothers and I were waiting for Sean at his location, and in the process of waiting, I think it was kind of rainy. It was during, let's see, this would have been 2019. And while we were waiting on his back of his place, there was a lot of hoot owl soundings, vocalization going on. And I thought, okay, that sounds kind of wonky. So we didn't go straight back, but we went, it would be to the west. And as we walked, there were some people, there were some tents there. And so we were walking closer to the tent. I think everybody was still at the, I think this was a Friday night during the story time campfire. And
Right.
we had to go, we went down into Three Rivers. And so I said, that doesn't sound right. So I took a flashlight and I started walking back to behind the tents. And as soon as I got to the tents, I was looking, I said, okay, this sounds really close. And then it stopped as I shined the light. Then I turned the light off, and there was a moon out. I don't think it was a full moon, but it was enough that you could see the shadows off the moon. And I'm like, okay, I'll wait a second. And it was probably, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And then, whoo, and you could tell it wasn't an owl.
Right.
But it was so good, it was close enough. I said, I think we have visitors here. And it was fainter. And so I just walked away, at that point, and walked back to Sean's place. And we heard it going on the whole time. And then I found out, I think, from Sean that you had casted some prints very close to that same area.
Yeah, probably. They were only probably 30 yards from the cabin.
Wow. And I'm not saying it was the same one that was making the sound, but it was in that same general area. And when he was telling me, I'm like, what? And so I thought that was so cool. And
Yeah.
I saw some of the dermal ridges. So at some point in time when we hook up, I'd love to see those just in person. That's incredible.
Yeah, that whole area right there where Sean's cabin is. I told Sean, when Sean bought this place and got rid of the old trailer that was there and the barn that was there and everything, and started putting new stuff in, he had me come out and take a look at the place. And I went out there and was sitting out there one afternoon with him. And Sean, I told Sean, I said, Sean, you got Bigfoot on this property. And he was like, no, I don't. I said, yeah, you do. And he said, how do you know that? And I said, well, there's a tree break right over there that's broke. And over here, another 20 yards away, there's another tree break. And he goes, son of a blankety blank. And I said, I told you. I said, why would you not expect there to be activity around your property when it's only a mile away from where the siege of Honabi took place? I said, you've got Bigfoot all over the place down here.
Yeah. That's a very interesting area. And I'm trying to find out really, I don't know what the draw is. There's people. There's
right.
a higher concentration of activity because there's a town close by. It's not very big, but I know people are like the main attraction. So I guess that is, and they used to have a place close by that's since removed that they had garbage and things like that, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah, the dumpsters.
The
dumpsters.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but outside of that, it's really interesting how they had such a high activity level there. But then again, it doesn't surprise me because when we were in Three Rivers, I'm not kidding, every night I would be there a week and then we would leave, and my dad would stay there kind of monitoring camp, and then we would come back the following weekend. So once we used up our week of vacation, then we could only come back like for 2 days on the weekend, then we'd leave and then come back for 2 days on the weekend. But every night I was there was always some activity, and the best time I could hear things going. Well, the times we had the most activity in camp is when there was no lights on in camp and no one had any generators on. It was just silence. But it seemed like when you have generators on and you have lights on, you can't hear activity. You have no idea you don't hear branches breaking or things like that. Whereas we did definitely before every night, which was, I thought, really cool. But I think after my brothers and I were talking about, some of the things that were happening in camp and everybody was just oblivious, I think it kind of freaked them out. So they started leaving lights on at night and turning generators on and leaving radios on all night. I'm like, what do you... Anyway, it was kind of comical.
You guys want some fun? You guys want some fun or what?
I know.
Why are you turning that stuff on?
I know. I think we kind of spooked a couple of them.
Right.
But anyway, we had a lot of activity there.
We've found quite a few areas that are like that. One of the areas that we've been to quite a few times is down on the Red River at Brown Springs. I don't know if you're familiar with Brown Springs, but there's there's a lot of history there.
Oh yeah.
A history of 2 people getting killed there and a bunch of other stuff. But,
yeah, a lot of bootleggers and gangsters and a lot of other things early.
A lot of Bigfoot down there too. We have found some really amazing structures down there on the Texas side of the river and on the Oklahoma side. We've had things happen to us while we were there. One of the things that I did just out of curiosity, when we go there, we go way back in the woods there. I mean, you can't even find trash laying around. I mean, it's pretty pristine. And so one of the things I did just out of curiosity, I got up in the middle of the night and there was a tree that was pretty close to my tent, and I would go out there and pee on this tree, and just to see if I would get any kind of results of them being upset with me for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And woke up the next morning. It was raining and everything else. So the guy that was with me, a buddy of mine, he woke up with a migraine headache, and so we drove into Gainesville and got some medicine for him, and then we stopped and ate breakfast, and we went back out to our campsite. When we got back out to our campsite, this tree that I had been messing with was only about probably 4 or 5 inches in diameter, and it was right next to my tent. When we got back to the campsite, that tree had been broken almost at ground level and was shoved up next to my tent. And this wasn't a dead tree. This tree was green, leaves, everything was on it.
Oh gosh!
And so that was my first experience of doing something like that and getting a result. And we've been down there once before, and I found another tree, another location, and this tree was pretty good ways from me at this point, because I thought, man, if that man would have, or if that tree would have fell on my tent, it would have crushed me. And so I found a different tree a little ways off and did the same thing on that tree. And the next morning when we got up, there was a half decomposed deer leg laying on one of the branches. So I think I got their attention both times.
Yeah.
But we've had lots of we've found tracks there at Brown Springs. Had some weird stuff happen to us while we were there. I had set out like 5 different recorders in 5 different areas and had GPS them, and that way we could find out where I'd set them when we were getting ready to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Well, out of 5 recorders, I only found one of them. There were 4 of them that were gone.
Really?
And yeah, and I don't know. I have no idea what happened to them or where they went.
How did you? Can I ask how you set the recorders up?
Yeah. Well, when I set them up, I tie a fishing string around my recorders.
Okay.
And then I'll find a limb, and I'll slide them on the limb, and put them to where they got something to hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I've always done it. And I've got a night vision video camera that I bought a couple of years ago, and I tell you what, it puts out some fabulous video. But we took that down to Brown Springs, and we had our tent set up by the river, and there were a couple guys come down by our tents and said, "Hey, we're going to do some fishing. Do you mind us if we? Is it okay if we fish down here?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And so they went down there and we're fishing. And Larry, one of my research buddies, he was the one that was down there. He had to ask me if he could borrow it, and I said, "Absolutely, you can borrow it." So Larry was down there, and they were kind of looking around, and all of a sudden, the guys that were fishing down there by the river, they were getting rocks thrown at them. And so Larry grabbed the night vision video camera of mine and turned it on and faced it over to where these guys were getting the rocks thrown from them. And when he moved the camera over to that spot, the whole video on the camera turned up like snow. It just snowed out the whole camera.
Really?
And and then he turned it back toward where the tents were, where they had camped, and he got a clear picture.
Okay, so that's crazy. This is a part that's always fascinated me. What the heck is going on? I had that happen with the GoPro. We were at the camp I was telling you about. It was that, we give it a nickname. We called it Windy Point. This wasn't where we had the experiences for 7 years in a row. We went to another location that was growing up in timber, but it was thick enough that allowed us to put tents and block wind. And Brother Bill went out to relieve himself on a tree, and big pine tree, and he's got a headlamp on. As he looked up, there was eye shine on the other side. There was a head right there. A Sasquatch was standing on the other side of the tree looking down at him, and he just about lost it. let's just say his bladder freely let go, and
Right.
he come running back in the tent. Get out of here right now! So I went out there and immediately started filming, and I had a brand new GoPro. I'd just been filming all day, no problem. And as soon as I started filming, it was snow white.
Yep.
It was just, I'm like, what the heck? So I couldn't get anything to go. And then as soon as I went back to the tent, all of a sudden, everything come back on. I said, this is crazy. What do you think? What do you think's going on there?
I don't know, because I've had really good results with this night vision video camera. We stayed up at this guy that lives there in Honolulu. We stayed at his house during the convention, and we had set up tents. And I just got this camera, and I was kind of over by my tent. My tent was probably about 40 yards from where the campfire was, where we were all kind of sitting around. And I went to the tent and checking out this camera, trying to figure out all the do's and don'ts with this thing, and was filming. And I wasn't really looking at anything. I wasn't really paying attention to what I was filming. I just filmed it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got home, I started looking through all the video footage that I had taken with this thing. And lo and behold, I captured one that was standing between two trees that was probably no more than 40 yards from where I was standing. And
wow.
we went out there and measured how tall it was, and it was 8 foot, approximately 8 feet 3 inches is what it was.
Jeez.
But I never, when I filmed this thing, I mean, you can definitely tell that's what it is, because you see the blurry spot, the dark color of it, and then if you zoom in to where his eye sockets were, eye shine, you can see eye shine there. And I actually sent it off to a photographer, and he looked at it and he put a filter lens on the photo itself, and it turned up to be a hot spot. So I knew right then that that's what I had taken. And so I as far as what's going on with the camera, I have no idea. I think part of me thinks, well, if they know that you're filming, I don't know if this is part of maybe some kind of infrasound thing, because we've experienced infrasound. I've experienced it 3 different times on 3 different people, one of them being myself. And so I don't know if maybe that's part of it, if that's some kind of part of the infrasound, or if it's something else. I don't know. This
is why we started taking an EMF reader, and that if it was going off, I probably should have an earpiece with it, so it's not, everybody else can hear it. But we take it with. Now we've had it go off a few times, and of course one time we were in a burial ground. It was going off for other reasons, but that's interesting. That's interesting how that happened to you. But please go ahead.
Well, some of those things down there, we don't going back to the 5 recorders that I had set out there at Brown Springs. One of the recorders was up on where they have the cemetery, and the cemetery is so old.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You can't see names on there. I mean, some of these stones are so old that you just can't read anything off of them. They're just blank, because they're weathered. But I set up one of my recorders up there.
Oh.
And the crazy thing happened. What was crazy is we left it there for the whole weekend. And while we were there, there was a pretty good sized group of us, probably 5 or 6 of us that were there. And one night, I think it might have been the second night we were there. It might have been the first night. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. But anyway, we heard a scream that was extremely loud. Sounded like an old lady cackling. It was really weird. And my thought was, man, that's going to be awesome because I got a recorder right up there where this sound resonated from.
Right.
And I'm thinking that's going to be a pretty awesome audio that I captured. And so at the end of the trip, I went around and started looking for my recorders. I couldn't find 4 of them. Well, I thought, well, I'm going to go up here to the cemetery. I'm sure that one's still there. Sure enough, that one was still there. Well, I get it, and I push play, and you can hear me and the guys that are with me. You can hear us talking, but it's as I turned it on, and you can hear us walking away from the recorder, and all of a sudden, instantly, the recorder stops.
Oh, no.
And I thought, well, it's obviously going. The batteries are working.
Right.
So what stopped it?
Hmm.
And don't know what stopped it.
Well,
It just stopped.
you and I have another mutual friend that that's there in Honabi, and I was up there during the conference this past October, and I stayed with him, and we were just talking about the area. We just got off on conversation talking about the area, and I said, is there anything strange? You get driven by, you just get a weird vibe or something's happened odd. He goes, matter of fact, there is. And I go, really? Where's that at? And he talked about the cemetery. And he talked about, you probably heard the story. He was on a side-by-side, and all of a sudden he was driving right by that cemetery, and all the electronics shut down. The engine, the lights, everything. It just boom.
Oh, wow.
It just shut down. He couldn't get it started. And apparently this has happened twice in the same location. And for no reason. He can't figure it out. And he said, there's something going on right there. And I said, can we go there? And he goes, oh, yeah, we'll go there. I never did get a chance. I just ran out of time for the time duration I had. Had I stayed there one more night, I wanted to go back. I said, show me where you were at. He said, oh, it'll probably happen. So anyway, I thought that was strange, you saying what you just said.
Right. Well, I don't know what causes some of that stuff. I mean, I'm not part of the paranormal crew type stuff. I mean, I believe that these things are actually an undiscovered primate. And because and the reason I say that, Lance, is because I've seen too many primate characteristics and what they do and the things that how they act.
Yeah, in the physical.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
Now, that's not to say I'm not going to put myself in a box and say, okay, it's this way or no way. I mean, I'm going to give that some thought, but I've had a guy on my show before that would talk about they would find a trackway going out into the middle of this field, and all of a sudden the trackway would stop. And they would tell me, well, it went somewhere. It had to go through, must have jumped through a portal or climbed on a UFO or something. And I never would bite that hook. I never would.
Yeah.
And we actually, we found a trackway out in northwestern Oklahoma. And this trackway it walked out into this field and walked out there a little ways, and all of a sudden the track stopped. And I thought, okay, that's a little weird. No trees around, nothing. Middle of a field, and the tracks just stopped. And I thought, you know what? There's got to be a reason why that happened, or what. There's some kind of something is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I got down on my hands and knees, me and the guys that were with me, and got down on our hands and knees, and we started looking at the tracks. Well, instead of a 5-toe track in one track, we found a 10-toe track.
Hmm.
This thing was backing in its own footprints, going backwards.
Hmm.
It was backtracking its own tracks. And we found a spot where this thing actually climbed up on a tree, and you could see the mud on the tree where his muddy feet had climbed up on this tree and jumped on a limb and went across this limb, jumped to another tree on another limb, and jumped off of that onto the ground and went a completely different direction.
Wow.
Now, if you think about that, that's pretty amazing.
Well, it is. It shows a very high degree of intelligence, but the degree of intelligence I'm speaking of is that it's more of almost a second level and third level of intelligence, where
Sure.
it knows this and it knows the possible outcome of a man following its tracks and what that man
Sure.
may do. So there's nothing in the indigenous world that I'm thinking of that can really do that. There's some smart animals of the wild, of course. I mean, people don't realize it, but wild feral hogs are highly intelligent. Pretty odd, but they're very intelligent. But nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Right. Well, here's the amazing thing. I know the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe pretty well here, and I've been. In fact, that's where I first started my shows, was on the Cheyenne and Arapaho radio station. So I've talked a lot to the natives over there, and they all know me, and they're familiar with me and what I do. And anyway, this whole subject matter of backtracking in its own tracks, that is an old Native American technique that they used to use on other Indian tribes that were their enemies, and they'd do it to confuse whoever was after them.
Hmm.
So my mindset is, okay, so did Bigfoot learn that from the Indians by watching them, or did the Indians learn that from Bigfoot from watching them?
Good question.
Whatever it is, it's something that needs to be. I don't know how we'd ever find that out, but it is something to be looked at.
Yeah. I'm getting some feedback or something. It was some.
You are?
Yeah. It was like you had a CB on or something. That.
It could be. Is it gone now?
Yeah, it is. That was weird. Interesting.
Another thing.
No, that's a great question.
And I tell you another thing that's kind of interesting. We have found in one area mounds, and I'm talking big mounds. I'm talking 10 to 12 feet long, 3 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and they're in the woods, and there's hundreds of these things laying around.
Really?
And, yeah, and I've actually taken pictures of that, and I went up to the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe because this was on their land, and I took it and took the pictures to the chief, and I asked him, I said, well, what are these? And he said, well, those are burial mounds. And I said, they are. He said, yeah, but they're not ours. And I said, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, our burial mounds aren't that big. And they actually had some ground penetrating radar at the tribal center, and when talking to the chief says, I'll introduce you to the lady that does all that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, maybe you guys can set up an appointment. And he said, we'll be more than happy to go out there and run it over the top of these mounds just to see if there's anything in them. I said, yeah, because I'm not going to touch them. I'm not going to dig into them. I'm not going to do any of that stuff because number one, we found there was a hole in one of these mounds where a rabbit had been digging.
Okay.
And about 5 feet from this mound, this rabbit was ripped in half and was laying on the ground.
Say that again?
This rabbit was ripped in half.
Oh.
I mean, ripped apart.
Wow.
And it was laying probably 5 feet from where this mound was. And every time we go in this area, we're followed. And the reason I know that is because I'm taking thermal imagers with me, and we can hear them behind us walking. And we've turned the thermal on, and I actually counted at one specific time. I counted 7 of them that were walking behind us, and it was 4 adults and 3 juvies, and plus there were some other ones up ahead of us that we could hear too.
You were in a very important area.
Yes, and I think these areas are sacred areas.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds crazy or sounds stupid or whatever, but I really do think that this whatever this is, and like I said, I'm not going to dig into any of it, but whatever it is, I'm not going to mess with it, and I think it means something to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually put some stuff on the internet. It's been a couple of years ago. The pictures that I took of these mounds, I put them on my Facebook page and was asking Bigfoot people if they had ever seen anything like this in their areas. And I started getting pictures back from these people and saying, yeah, we've seen them here. We've seen them here. We've seen them here. And so whatever this is, I think that's I believe it is a burial ground.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, this is one of those debatable big themes that you hear in the cryptid community, and people, how come we haven't seen a body or got a body? Well, here's the thing, is that either people, when they say that, they're comparing oranges to oranges. You're comparing it to say a white-tailed deer or a bear,
right,
or anything else that dies on the ground, that they don't have the self-awareness or wherewithal, intellect, to have that reasoning to bury. Or things happen and, it's the circle of life. Other animals eat on it and they just kind of rot away. And then you have the insects of the forest floor, and it's gone in just weeks. And then you have some bones that lay around and decay even further. But we're talking a hominoid being that has, we believe, a language, a rudimentary or very, when I say advanced, I don't mean technologically advanced, but advanced culture. They have, they experience emotion, anger, love, fright. They have an ability to survive out in the harshest elements that we need: clothing and tent and fire and all that. And to my awareness, they don't make tools in the sense like, early man did, but yet they can survive just with the supernatural strength, ability, and speed they have. So, yeah, I mean, I think that besides having possibly a ritual to bury, I think they're on the top of the soil too, but they cover it up, and they go for areas that are very remote and isolated, that they've never really had a lot of human traffic go within, possibly. But I'm sure that they keep guard over these areas because it means something to them. What exactly, don't know, but it means something very, very important.
Yeah, and not only that, Lance, but I mean, you think about that. I mean, the chief at the tribal center, he knew what it was. Okay, so did they learn that from the Bigfoot, or did the Bigfoot learn that from them? Because they've obviously done the same thing.
Yeah.
Same way with backing up in their tracks.
I wonder, there was an episode I did of a guy. It was down in South Oklahoma. It was a show. We named it The Bigfoot Who Knew Me. And how the Bigfoot approached him was quite interesting, because it's how an aquarian training horses would approach a horse that's a little skittish. The Bigfoot approached him coming from its side, and its both palms were anterior. They were opened up, facing forward, so the back of the hand is going back, and the Bigfoot slid left foot in a stride, in a straight line right toward him, and the right foot slid to the left, and then the left foot came out and the right foot slid to the left. So it's stepping side to side, coming to him with its mouth in a smiling fashion that he's mimicking us as a friendly smile, and its teeth is exposed, but not in an aggravating, aggressive way, but as a smile, like, I'm not here to hurt you, I'm coming toward you. And he's like, how in the hell does it know to do that? Did it do that? Yeah. It must have seen it from somebody. It must be repeating something it saw someone doing in and around that area. And of course, when I say area, who knows? 50 miles away, 60 miles, 10 miles. Right. I mean, no one knows. But it freaked him out because it got literally one more step and it would have stepped on his toe. It was a step away when he said, "You better stop or I'm going to blow your blankety blank head off." I mean, it scared him. Right. It scared him. And so he immediately ran behind this log and said, "This is not happening. This is not happening. This is not happening." And he stood up and he looked back where he was at, and the Bigfoot's looking at him like, are you going to say hi or I'm here, you know? But it's like, what are you doing? I'm right here. So he got back down and he just kind of, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? And then he got back up and then the Bigfoot just strode away. But he said there was a lot of times prior to that, growing up as a kid in that area, there was just odd things that were thrown at him and hit him in the back and just odd feelings. And he thinks that at that moment, that was the Bigfoot that kind of knew him growing up. And that's
very possible.
So anyway, I mentioned all that to say that unique characteristic, how it had approaching him, it had to learn. I felt, not everybody out of the womb comes learning stuff like that. You have to see it. So I don't know. I wonder. I mean, that's a really good question. Yeah. Did it learn it from the natives in the area or vice versa?
Well, I think I think one reason why Oklahoma has so many of them here is because I think they followed the Trail of Tears way back when. I had that feeling that took place. Now, whether there's any kind of records of that, I don't know, but I do think that there were so many different tribes that actually came to Oklahoma. I think they followed those tribes that they were used to and knew and followed them into Oklahoma. I really think that.
Yeah, I think I haven't heard that.
I might be a little bit loony.
No. I think there's, the more that I'm thinking about this, I've not thought about that. That's a great idea there that I've never really thought about that. And that's very plausible. Why not? You can't prove or disprove it, so it's definitely a great explanation. And would there have been some here? True, but could some had just followed all these tribes coming in that were relocated? Why not? Why not? Right. I mean, there's so much that were not written down or documented that I'm sure of encounters, of battles, of befriending these Bigfoot and who knows what else over the decades or centuries. Who knows?
Right.
Wow. Very, very interesting
stuff. But I've been to several different locations around the country, and I've had good things everywhere I go, I tell people I've either been lucky or I've been cursed, one of the two. But I've got some decent pictures and casted a bunch of prints, and I love this subject. It is a passion of mine and always has been, and probably will continue to be.
Well, it definitely once you get obsessed with it, and that's the word I use. Once you get obsessed, it's hard to get unlocked from it, for sure.
Exactly. But another place that we've been, I don't know if you've ever been over in this part of the Oklahoma, but over in Tahlequah, we did an expedition at Lake of the Arbuckles. That's where we were camped at, and we went all over the state on this particular week that we were out, and Tahlequah was amazing. We went to this area, nobody had ever been there, and we found this area, and of course we were there probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around in there, and there was about probably 12 or 14 of us. Me and Tim Kumbo Baker from the Bigfoot Outlaws is the one that decided to do this expedition, and this place over in Tahlequah was an amazing spot. We actually counted 1, 2, 3. There was 4 of them in one spot one night. We had gotten out on this road, and it was they were cutting cedar and had stacked up a bunch of cedar on trailers and stuff. And this was an area, I mean, you just had to get lucky to find this place. And we stopped our vehicles and got out, and Kumbo was in the front. And I noticed Kumbo, he was messing with his FLIR, and I kept thinking, well, what's he doing? And I walked up to him, and all of a sudden he said, "Holy crap!" And I was like, "What? What's the matter?" And he goes, "There was a Bigfoot that just walked right in front of me." He goes, "My whole screen was orange. I didn't know what it was. I thought there was something wrong with my FLIR."
Oh man!
And he said, "This thing was probably 5 or 6 feet from me, and it walked across this dirt road right in front of his pickup." And
oh geez.
Of course, when he said that, I flipped on my spotlight, and everybody else had the spotlights. They flipped on spotlights, and this thing walked into the tree line, and the only thing that we saw after that was we had an eye shine right there, and just for a split second, and then you could tell it. You could hear it going through the brush and through the trees there.
Wow.
He said that he estimated this thing to be at least an 8 or 9 footer. He said it was huge. And anyway, so we had that excitement going on, and about that time, when we opened up our spotlights and was looking at that one, we actually spotlighted down the road, and there was 2 more of them that walked out of the wood line that was probably 100 yards from us, and we picked them up on spotlights and caught their eye shine, and they come right out onto the road itself, out of the wood line, and we're standing in the middle of the road watching us.
Oh wow!
And so we thought, let's go down there. And so we took a couple steps, and about that time, this wild hog come walking out of the wood line where this Bigfoot had come from, the first one.
Okay.
And walked right out in front of the pickup, and panic mode took on a whole 5 minutes there. We were in panic mode. We were grabbing guns because we didn't know if this hog was going to turn and run toward us or if there was more hogs coming. We had no idea.
Right.
And we had our guns, and this hog walked across the dirt road and went right into the wood line where this Bigfoot had went, the first Bigfoot. And we thought that was kind of weird because this hog never turned to look at us. I mean, we were making all kinds of racket, and why he didn't turn and attack us, I have no idea. The only thing that I could think of was that hog had been hit by infrasound because he was lackadaisious. I mean, he just looked like he wasn't all there. But he walked across the road that took the same pathway that the Bigfoot had taken. And that was just weird.
That is weird, because usually hogs are pretty sensitive about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so there was about 4 of us that got together and started walking down toward the 2 that were standing in the road down there. And we were trying to make some headway getting down there. And we kept seeing them. I mean, they didn't move for a long time. And we finally got, I don't know how close it was, probably maybe 30 or 40 yards from them. And they moved back into the wood line and disappeared. And so that was 3. We saw the 2 on the road, and then the one that had walked in front of us when we first got there, well in front of Kumbo. And so we drove our vehicles down there and stopped at there was a cattle guard there, and it was chained up, so we didn't go any further. But we were parked at that cattle guard, and we could hear growls. That area had a lot of brush, a lot of trees, and we could hear growls. They were growling at us, and we stayed there for a few minutes listening to all this, and kept thinking that maybe one of them was going to come out. We had probably 5 carloads of people, maybe.
Okay.
Or trucks. There was quite a few of us there, and so we ended up. We couldn't go any further, so we ended up turning around and going back. Well, as we're going back, there was a great big oak tree sitting there on this trailhead, and as we pass it, Kumbo's in front. I'm driving the pickup behind him, and Mary Fabian was in the front seat. Or no, her and her sister Debbie were in the back seat. And from Pennsylvania Bigfoot. And so we come out of there and we pass this tree. And as we pass this tree, Debbie, Mary's sister, Debbie had never ever seen a Bigfoot. And I'm telling you, Lance, she was scared to death. And you know, there's a lot of people like that.
Of course.
Never ever seen one, and they don't want to see one. And that's kind of the way her mindset was. Well, we passed this tree, and all of a sudden, Debbie's in the back seat. She says, "Hey, I think I just saw a Bigfoot." And I turned around and looked at her. I said, "Oh, Debbie," I said, "quit pulling my leg." I said, "You didn't see no Bigfoot." And Mary looks at me and says, "My sister doesn't lie." And I knew right then and there what she had seen. And I got on the walkie-talkie, because we all had radios in our pickups. And I got a hold of Kumbo. I said, "Kumbo, we got to turn around." He said, "Why? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, Debbie just saw one in the tree." And he said, "Well, turn around." He said, "We'll follow you." I said, "Okay." So we get to this tree, and what she saw, there was this oak tree that went up pretty high, and there was a V from 2 limbs that were branching out. And what she saw was a Bigfoot was sitting in that V, had his arms wrapped around those 2 limbs, and his feet were kicking over the side of the tree like a kid on a swing.
Wow.
That's what she saw.
Wow.
And when we passed by it, there was a car that was behind us with some other people in it. And they said they saw something drop down out of the tree and hit the ground as we went by. So there was a total of 4 Bigfoot that were right there in that vicinity. And what we think happened, we think that we interrupted a pig hunt They were hunting pigs that night.
Very likely.
Yeah.
Very likely. Wow, that's an incredible account with everybody there. I mean, not only one person, but you had several Bigfoot present themselves in front of a lot of different eyewitnesses there. And that area, Tahlequah, was one of a very interesting encounter story he did of a gentleman. It got deep quick, but basically he called in, we hit it off, and he was walking on a trail intentionally stacking rocks. He had always carry rocks in his pocket and he would stack rocks. And
Sure.
he left a picture of him and his grandfather when he was a kid, and he left it under some rocks or right in the middle of these rocks. He would stack them all along this trail. And it was near a very well-known body of water in the area. Well, this was about early spring one year. This was a few years ago. Well, a couple months go by and he calls a toll-free number. We were going to wait till later in the summer to go. And he calls me back and he said, I never expected you, Lance, and I never thought you would do this to me, and I'm going to expose you for who you are. And I'm like, what's he talking about? And come to find out, he later, immediately after he said that, he said, I've never seen so many military helicopters, Humvees, and blacked out SUVs out here. They're all over the place, and this is crazy. I hope they don't hurt the Bigfoot. And that was it. Well, I thought, wow. Oh my gosh, what happened? So I didn't want to call him back in fear that my phone had been jacked with, which sure. I didn't know. And so I thought, I don't want to call him back and present another issue when I had nothing involvement. So he contacts me 2 years go by. He contacts me and he said, hey man, I'm sorry, Lance, you had nothing to do with this. I now know you just were totally innocent of this whole thing, but I now know those people that are looking, actively pursuing and looking for these creatures to hurt them, to shoot them, to collect them, to kill them. I don't know, but that's what they were doing. He said, all I'm going to say is that all is well. Things are going well, and that I'm moving from this area. And that before I leave, though, all is well. And I'm like, okay, we had a great conversation, but that area is a very high active area for sure.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of areas down there that are like that. A lot.
Yeah, that's, and you know, in Oklahoma, and I can't really say for other states, but some people have called me, and I'm sure as they called you, hey, where do I go investigate? And I want to go. And I'm like, well, honestly, I don't know where you live, but you might just check in your backyard, metaphorically speaking, but technically reality is, just check. You never know until you get out and you know what you're looking for, you know what you're listening for, until you get out. Watch some of these shows, read some books, look at some videos until you kind of know, okay, what kind of evidence am I looking for? And it's amazing, just the sightings that people have around outside of golf courses, lakes, parks, the perimeter of metro area, just in the suburb, boat ramps. I mean, it doesn't have to be in the remote woods, although it is. It just can be where kind of the city is migrating in, or they have a curiosity and smells or sounds or people are bringing them in.
Right. Well, you said golf courses. I know there's a golf course out west of us, and they spent a ton of money on this place, and it is a beautiful golf course. But it's actually closed down now. Rumor has it that guys would be out there playing golf on this golf course, and Bigfoot would run across the golf course.
Oh, geez, I'd freak them out.
They quit going there because of it, and they ended up closing the golf course down. And like I said, you can drive out there and drive by there and see where they had cement runways for carts and stuff, and just all kinds of stuff out there, man. I mean, it's a beautiful course. But this area is pretty well known for having Bigfoot activity around it. So
interesting. Well, and that's the thing, is that how many of these places, I always tell people, scratch your head a little bit and wonder why, what is going on here? What does this mean? What does this mean is when you see something that should be open, or a campground permanently closed, or a park permanently closed. I guess you could throw golf courses in that mix too.
Sure.
I mean, granted, the most obvious is people don't, it's just not busy. Okay. That's logical. But, when you start seeing fences up, and when you start seeing things closed, especially when it was really busy, I always tell people, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so out of all has there been any, you say you've got some hair samples and some prints.
Mm-hmm.
What's been the most, I know it's all interesting, of course, and it's highly fascinating.
Sure.
Has there been any particular piece of evidence that you've acquired that is the most fascinating, or something really interesting, or a different print because of the way it looks, or?
Right. You know what, to be honest with you, Lance, the one thing that got me interested more than anything else was the audio. Because my mindset was, well, if you're going to prove that these things exist, probably the best evidence that you can get is audio, because there's nothing out there in the woods that can scream like these things can. And it's just, it's hard to debunk that kind of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the big thicket down there, I had set out recorders all around camp, probably 100 yards out from where we were. And I collected some of the best audio I think I've ever heard. One of the calls, in fact, when I had my shows going, and eventually I'm going to get my shows back on the air. There's a lot of people begging me to get it back on the air and stuff.
Great.
But so I'm in the process of doing that. I had all my shows, actually. I don't know what happened to my laptop, but about 2 years ago, I lost everything on my laptop, including my shows. My shows disappeared from YouTube. And
what?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I
didn't know this.
Yeah, and it wiped out everything.
So okay, so you didn't find it yet. You're saying it wiped out everything.
No.
You just didn't find your laptop.
No, I have my laptop. It just disappeared off of my laptop.
Oh.
All of it.
Well, here's the thing.
And,
I mean, I don't know I don't have to know all the details, but I can tell you right now, if you had audio on there and video, that makes a lot of people that we haven't really got into this conversation. I'm in a process right now writing about this, but it makes them very, very, very nervous, and they don't.
Well, I tell you, it's funny you should say that, because boy, have I got a story to tell you.
Oh, please, if you don't mind, I'll tell it.
Well, if you got time.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm all ears.
Well, when I got into this, I'm not somebody that just is a casual, let's get into this kind of thing. And so what I did was I was thinking about what's a good way to tackle some of this stuff. And the one thing that came to my mind was I need to use the Freedom of Information Act. And so the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I thought that was the way to go.
Mm.
And I contacted, you're going to think this is crazy, but I contacted 7 different government agencies.
Oh, man.
And sent them I sent them the same letter, every one of them.
And what was the, in a nutshell, what did the letter, what were you requesting?
Well, the first thing I requested was, I said, okay, I want to use the Freedom of Information Act because I want to know what you guys know about Bigfoot, Yeti, the Grassman, whatever you want to call a Bigfoot, whatever you guys call them. I want to know what you guys know. Sorry about the dog in the background.
That's okay. Sure, no problem.
Driving me crazy. Anyway, so that's what I did. And I contacted Wildlife Fish and Game was one of the agencies. The FBI was another one. Department of
Natural Resources.
So long ago, I can't remember who all I gave this to. Department of
was it like Department of Natural Resources or anything like that?
No.
Homeland Security, NSA.
No. This was one of the organizations that actually has. You listen to a lot of Bigfoot shows, and these guys appear in a bunch of these stories. One of them is dressed like a hippie, and the other one's dressed up in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
Like a good cop, bad cop guy. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, so I sent these requests out, and one request was for Wildlife Fish and Game, and Wildlife Fish and Game actually sent me a report, one report, and it was a report about 3 women that were driving down the road in Oregon, and one crossed the road in front of them, and the ladies reported it to Wildlife Fish and Game. So Wildlife Fish and Game had to go out and investigate it, and of course, by the time they got there, there was nothing there to be found. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So I got that report. Another report I got was, I don't even remember what agency this was, but they said, yeah, there's a guy that in California that has come up with a new idea for a shoe, and he's calling it the Bigfoot. And I'm thinking, really? You guys gonna play this game with me or what? Yeah, something stupid, right? So then,
oh, that's ridiculous.
I get a letter from another agency, and this is really what kind of opened up my eyes. This letter that they sent me, they said, okay, well, we need specific names, specific dates, and specific places. I'm thinking, okay, they just pretty much told me that they know about this stuff by asking me they need all these other things.
Sure.
So I guess they thought I wasn't going to reply to their letter, and I did. And I give them 2 pages of specific names, dates, and places, and sent it back to them.
Oh.
Never got a response. Never got a response from them.
What about the people that you gave the names and the locations? Did they have visitations?
Did they what?
Did they have visitations by them with the names
I don't know. I never got anything else from that group.
What
like I said, I don't think they thought that I was going to. And the specific names, dates, and places. Those are the things that I chose to put into that was well-known encounters and sightings with dates, names of the people, and the places where they were. I mean, it wasn't something that I didn't. I mean, this stuff was already out there. You know, people knew about these other things.
Okay.
And so it wasn't I mean, it wasn't like I was blowing the whistle on somebody or something like that. That people know about these sightings.
Okay.
So, never got any kind of result from them.
Which
And,
you doesn't surprise me.
right.
It doesn't surprise me.
3 months later, after all this, I get audited by the IRS.
Really?
Never had an IRS problem. Never had any problem with the government. And that kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
In the meantime, my phone got tapped. I could be talking to somebody on the phone, and I can hear music in the background. I can hear voices in the background. And the person I was talking to, whoever I was talking to, and this happened to me, I don't know how, multiple times. I would ask them, do you guys hear music? No. And I'm like, okay, you hear anybody talking? No. Okay. And I began to hear, every time this stuff would start, I would hear these clicking noises on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I automatically knew what was happening, what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I was sitting at my laptop, and this goes back to after everything kind of disappeared. One night I was sitting at my laptop, and I was looking at my laptop, and I was sitting back. I didn't even have my hand on my mouse, and my cursor was going across my screen, opening up files.
Oh.
So that happened, and I was witness to that. And so I had a good friend that I think he's passed away now. I'm not really sure. I hadn't talked to him in so long. But his name was Tal Bronco. And Tal lives in Arkansas. He did a lot of stuff in Arkansas, did a lot of stuff in Alabama. He helped them set up Bigfoot stuff. Tal was, at the time that I was talking to him on a pretty regular basis, he was probably 87. Had been doing Bigfoot research for over 50 years. Did stuff with lawyers and feds and all that kind of stuff. Very, very smart guy, very intelligent. And I had come to know Tal. He had been on a couple of my shows, and one night I'm sitting here at the house, and I get a phone call, and it's Tal. He said, "Hey, I got to ask you a question." I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "A couple of months ago, did you contact the federal government using the Freedom of Information Act about Bigfoot?" And I think my mouth probably hit the floor. And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he said, "Chuck, I want you to know you stirred up a hornet's nest." And I said, "I did?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I need to know what your Freedom of Information Act said. If you got responses, I need to know what the responses were. And I need to know what happened." And I said, "Okay." I said, I'll give that information to you. And so I told him all of it. And I said, "Tal, do I need to get away from this Bigfoot stuff some? And kind of lay off on my show for a while?" And Tal got kind of quiet, and he said, "Hell no." He said, "You're doing a damn good job doing what you're doing. You just need to keep it up."
Okay.
He said, you're doing what needs to be done, and they're waking up to it."
Wow.
I'm like, okay. So I ended up moving to Alabama for about a month, and that's kind of a long story. But on my way to Alabama, I called Tal and told him I was coming through Arkansas and would love to stop by his house and see him and his wife and meet him and stuff. And he gave me directions, and I ended up spending the night there with him, and which was an amazing event for me because Tal was way up there on my person list, and he started pulling maps out, showing me maps where he spotted them and all this, and told me a little bit about what he used to do and all this kind of stuff. And one thing that always bugged me is I wondered, well, how did he know?
That's what I was going to ask you.
How did he know that I used the Freedom of Information Act?
Mm-hmm.
So about 2:00 in the morning, we were sitting in his office, and I said, Tal, I want to know something. And I said, it's really been bugging me. And he says, well, shoot, tell me. And I said, I always wondered, how did you know that I used the Freedom of Information Act to target the government? And he said, I'll tell you. He said, one night I was sitting here at the house. He said, the night that I called you. And he said, I have a friend that's in the FBI. And he said, this guy called me and asked if I knew you. And I told him yes. And he started asking all kinds of questions about you. Is he a good guy? Is he reputable? Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Tal vouched for me from the get-go. And he said after he asked me a couple questions and got feedback from me, that was the end of our conversation. So
interesting.
I've been picked. They know me.
Yeah, I was going to say they know several people in Oklahoma, especially with the shows, and those people that I'll push the limits, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I can tell you what they definitely, and I'm going to just say, I've been digging into this quite a bit. I'll just say that these people represent a corporate entity, because the military-industrial complex is in bed with large corporations. The military, yes, the U.S. government really doesn't do their own dirty work. They hire it out. So they hire everything out, and they're intimately involved. They cut the checks, but they hire everything out to be actively pursued, and they have full authority. It's illegal, it's criminal, it's unconstitutional, but at the same token, fourthly, it's just dangerous. These people can operate with no limits. There's no boundaries. And what they'll do is they won't come out and tell you what they're going to do. They'll just do something, and they know they can do so many different things encrypted on the computer and everything electronically and digitally that, we don't have access to all these toys and software. Now, the FBI has software systems that they can monitor people. They can turn on cameras and things like that. Well, these corporate entities have the same availability. They have access to everything that at a very, very high level, and they operate out of bounds. They don't care if they destroy someone's life, and they'll go home and sleep like a baby. And what they do is they try to determine how much are you pushing the envelope, and they'll just do what I call is the first level of deterrence. And what they'll do, they'll just they'll say, shut down your bank account for a couple of weeks. And there may or may not be some money in there. Or they'll call the IRS, and you're like, what the hell, what?
Yeah.
Or you may find out your boss says, we don't need you here anymore. Sorry. What?
Right.
I've been working here 25 years. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I'm sorry. So they've been threatened very mildly. I mean, any number of things. So they're a very dangerous group because they don't operate in the same rules and laws that you and I have to. And they don't like this, that you have evidence. And I tell people, well, first of all, I'll just say this. You definitely had some cojones. But everybody I tell people not to talk to, you definitely did, but I understand why too. They track, I'll put it this way. Anyone that asks for Freedom of Information Act on anything is monitored. And anyone that goes to the CIA website, cia.gov, and looks for certain documents to see if it's there, they don't have to attain anything. They know who you are just researching the terms, regardless of what it is. They're also monitoring you there. They know who I am. I've had very similar things. We'll get into that for another time. Very similar things happen, but unfortunately, there's so many apps and software systems that can break into our laptops, our desktops, our phones, that if you have any picture of anything, and if you did not copy it, it's gone. It can go bye-bye like overnight. So.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
No, and these people don't operate with the same rules. Like I said, they don't care about destroying someone's life. There's something in the military.
No skin off their back.
What's that?
There's no skin off their back.
Of course not. No, they operate under strict orders on what they can do,
Right.
which is unlimited. But, there's a military term called TWEEP. And there's a lot of military terms and acronyms, dozens and dozens, hundreds. But one is called TWEEP, which is terminate with extreme prejudice. And I created another term that makes sense to me is DWEP, which is devastate with extreme prejudice. And
Right.
what they can do is the two cousins, the Ohio Bigfoot attack, they definitely destroyed their life. They contacted a multitude.
Are you talking about the guys that were on the island?
Yeah. Yeah, they completely obliterated their life. And so if they can do that and take away any monetary funds that you have access to, and or your spouse, you don't have a way to make a living, and it shuts people up really fast. When you lose your job, you lose your home,
Oh, yeah.
you lose your car, you lose your family because your spouse doesn't understand what's going, because you have a joint bank account and your savings account's closed and the IRS has got it locked up and your bank doesn't know what's going on. They just say
Right.
IRS has it locked up. And you can't speak to a radio station because they threaten the radio station manager. So it's a series of bad events, and it tends to shut you up real fast. Even if they didn't come out and say, it's because it's us, by the way, we're shutting you down because you're opening your mouth. They never said that. So they were,
Right.
the cousin I was talking to was clueless until I said, here's what's going on. This is why it's going on. This is who's doing it. He said, I had no clue, Lance. I said, well, we just need to be quiet for a while. You need to lay low, go dark, and not say anything. That's what they want you to do. And to get your life back in order, you kind of have to do that because they know your number. They know my number. They didn't get a hold of you first, and that's why 3 days later I was able to get it out. But unfortunately, getting it out, they follow YouTube channels. So if they don't monitor a phone, they follow channels. I mean, it's the YouTube channels, like my show, your show, and others, is kind of like a police scanner to them.
Right.
It literally is. It's like a police scanner. And they're scanning Facebook, and they're scanning Instagram and Snapchat. And they do have access to all of the radio frequencies, whatever, with the State Department the state departments with wildlife conservation in every state, and police scanners. And they have special numbers to contact them. So yeah, it's a crazy above top secret organization that they operate in plain sight and no one knows who they are. They don't give a calling card and they never give a name, and they speak in code, so to speak.
Yeah.
They'll never come out and say Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Dogman, Mothman, skunk, ape, wood ape. They'll never say anything like that. You'll never hear that. They'll speak in code. They'll say, we hear you have a problem. I would be quiet with your issues. They'll talk in terms like that. So they're trained very, very well. Yeah. So I'm in that process of really in discovery right now. That's a crazy story, Chuck. That's nutty.
Yeah.
I'll ask you in private. Never mind. There's another question, but I'll ask you in private about,
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, do you have, of the material that you lost, do you still have that material elsewhere that's protected?
I do now. I'll put it that way.
Okay, good. And that's what I try to instruct people. So
yeah, I'm fixing to get. I had a backup that I didn't know I had.
Oh, okay. So what is your recommendation?
All my shows.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Get all my shows back, and so I've probably got over 100 shows at least, maybe 200. I'm not really sure, but I'm fixing to get all those back. There's a real good friend of mine that's gonna send me a thumb drive with all my stuff on it.
Great.
Actually collected. So
fantastic.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I tell anyone that has a show, you immediately make a copy that's not on your laptop or desktop.
Right.
I've been doing that since we started. And I've got more than, so every show I've got like 3 different locations where they're at.
Right.
And 2 of the locations are not at my house. So,
right. Yeah, I learned my lesson. I'm definitely going to have a backup game.
So what is your recommendations? Kind of talking about that. When someone says, if someone came to you and they said, hey, Chuck, listen, man, I got a video like you would not believe. It's HD, it's daylight. I have this GoPro camera. It walked right out in front. I don't know what to do with it. It's crazy. This is nutty. You can tell very clear. This is about a 9-foot male, came out. He looked at me and he just strolled on. What is your recommendations? Because I've told people kind of my recommendations if they have something like that. But what would you say to someone like, it's got that? And they go, man, I want to put.
First of all, don't show it to anybody that you don't know you can trust. And that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Be careful.
I know with my stuff, with my photos, I mean, I've got some of the best photos, and I've had people tell me, you've got the money shot. And I don't even know what that means, Lance. I mean, I've never, when I started this, it wasn't about money for me. I wasn't in it for the money. And even when I started taking pictures and actually started getting some results from my pictures, I would post my pictures on Facebook, and people say, well, why aren't you doing something with those? I mean, why you need to put a watermark on them or whatever. And I've never done that because my attitude is to me, this whole thing is about truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I post something, and I caught a guy the other day posting one of my pictures, and it was a Dogman track that we got in Oklahoma City. And so, of course, these people were asking him all these questions when he posted it, and he was answering these questions, and I knew the guy. That's what was crazy. I know the guy who did it.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
So he said there was only one track, because that's the only picture I had, was just the one track.
Okay.
But there was a trackway, and so there were multiple tracks. And so I sent him a message on the same page that this was on, and all these people were asking him questions. I told him, I said, hey, if you want to know the real story, I said, just call me up and talk to me about it. I said, because I was there. I'm the one that took the picture.
Oh, wow.
And he, of course, he shut up after that.
Yeah.
And apologized to me and whatever. Well, that's fine. It does bother me that stuff happens, but I'm just not going to put a watermark on my stuff of pictures that I've taken, because to me, I'm sharing to prove that these things exist and are out there.
Right. Well,
and that's been my feelings all along. But I have decided, I put a lot of work into my shows, and I mean, I'll do a 2-hour show. Well, the 2-hour show ends up being a 20 or 24-hour project.
mm-hmm.
And I never did try to monetize any of that stuff, because it wasn't about the money for me. But now I'm thinking, the older I get, I think I need to make it to where it's monetized.
Well, I would recommend that. And the reason why, it has nothing to do with your character. You're doing what you're doing because you've got a good heart and you absolutely mean well. You're an honest, ethical, and moral guy. And that, I know you, and you went into it for the right reason, and you're still into it for the right reason. And those people that are in this community for the right reason usually are pretty even-keeled people. We respect each other. We just want to bring forth evidence. We're kind of obsessed with this. We want to make sure people are safe in the woods and that they get to go investigate and have the camaraderie and fellowship. But yet, with a lot of blessings and being fortunate, you could capture some footage that's just going to blow your mind, and maybe others, and you get that adrenaline rush. But everything is safe. Everybody's safe. But but since it does take a lot of time, and over time you do develop in becoming an expert. We're all students, but along the lines, you know a lot more than the average Joe out there. So you're gaining more knowledge and expertise in this. And so because it does take time to travel, it takes fuel, it takes food, it takes lodging, and you'd like to get better equipment. That's where I look at this as a what is your time worth in that regard? And I know you've put a lot of time in. Some of the tracks that I've seen that I've seen through mutual friends of ours, have been incredible. I think it's some of the best that I've seen. And so I would say, absolutely, I think to monetize and to copyright at least the pictures, because unfortunately, and this, you just mentioned the example, unfortunately I've had people, and you're not going to prevent this everywhere, but I've had people steal vocalization sounds that I have and calling it their own. And I've heard different people saying, yeah, I got this footage, and this one guy tried to pull the wool over my eyes by giving me, of all things, the vocalization audio and calling it his. And I'm just thinking, he surely couldn't have been that dumb.
Right.
And I said, listen, buddy, I said, I know those vocalizations. Those actually are mine. He said, well, you're calling me a liar? I said, no, I'm not calling you a liar. I said, by no means. I said, I'm just saying those are my audio files that because I've listened to it dozens and dozens of times, and I know every pitch. I can tell you when, what. I can tell you how I got them. And so he didn't say anything after that. He says, well, my buddy got him. I said, well, your buddy is pulling the wool over your eyes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you put a lot of time into it. You know, we're all working other jobs typically. And so, yeah, yeah, absolutely. You do in my, you know, people don't realize, and I've got into this before, you know, that most podcast shows die within the first 3 months. Actually, it's weeks. I think, well, yeah, it's like 8 to 13 weeks. Most podcast shows die
Right.
because the way the algorithms are even tougher now, if you don't get 1,000 subscribers, they don't even get you in the browser. It's
Right.
pretty tough.
I had I think when my show kind of went off the air, I think I had a total of 500 or 5,000 subscribers on there. That's what I had at the time.
Well, you let me know when things start getting back up, and I'll do what I can to help you in any way. And
Okay.
I'll talk to you off air too a little bit. I've got some ideas that
Okay.
we might, because I also, of course, one of the ideas is I want to go out and do a little bit of investigation with you. I've got some locations
Okay.
too. Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm excited to hear about that. I'm still mind blown of what you did on the Freedom of Information Act. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you put a huge
Lance,
radar.
I've got some cojones. I'm not.
You
I mean,
do.
I know those. I know those guys can do damage to me, but there again, it all comes about. It's all about truth. Truth is very important to me. It always has been.
Yeah.
And um, so if I get a little hit by them or whatever, I probably deserve it, but that's not going to stop me.
No.
I'm still gonna go out in the woods. I'm still gonna do what I'm doing. And the way I see it now, I'm kind of at a good spot to get this back going because I've been kind of in the dark for 2 years now, and so they haven't heard nothing from me in 2 years. So it'd be a good time for me to crank it back up.
Yeah. Why not? And yeah, it's like playing a chess game, and they're always moving the rules. They're always changing the goalpost. You know,
Right.
and that's kind of how they play. That's their MO, and they're instructed to do that. They have full reign to do it. The only thing is they get to operate illegally, and we have to follow the rules. And so I always say, don't do whatever we want to do, but don't be so don't telegraph too much.
Right.
Be incognito. Be like they are. Be like they are, which is hidden in plain sight. They're all around us. We just don't know who they are. I can, well, I'll save it for
I
later.
can tell you. I know a guy. I had a guy that was calling me on a pretty regular basis back when I had my show. He did a lot of stuff and knew more stuff than I ever knew about this stuff.
Mm.
And he is a military guy. And I've been told that there's fixing to be a breakthrough with all of this because of the UFO stuff being put out there. And I've never seen one, don't know anything about UFOs. That's not my cup of tea, not interested in it. But he said because of everything that's happening, there's fixing to be a big release of information. That's what I've heard.
That would be great. I will say this. I will say, in the research that I've been doing and writing, there is definitely, absolutely, unequivocally some overlap.
Right.
In a lot of areas. And so
Right.
that's where a lot of my reading late at night, doing a little bit of online research, it's all tied together. So to a certain degree, it is all tied together. And that would be fantastic. And it took only 50 years for them to acknowledge, um, and they're trying to change the narrative a little bit. If you notice, they went from UFO to unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Right.
What you're trying to do is go from Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC. It sounds a little less harsh,
Right.
right? And that's what they're doing, because UFO, unidentified flying object. Okay, but the name implies that there's something flying it. Now, could it be
Right.
unmanned or a being not, it's flown on its, someone else there's nothing on board, where it's just a craft, highly technologically advanced craft? Sure. But could there be beings on this, living beings? Absolutely. So by changing the name, you're not making the UFO into, you're making the unidentified aerial phenomena it's just a thing floating out there in the wind. No, no, no. It's a craft, and there's something possibly flying it that's not terrestrial. It's extraterrestrial.
Sure.
And so they're trying to soften it up a little bit. And there's a whole host of things I won't get into because it gets around that, but I'll just say a lot of the research, it's crazy. It gets into some really interesting, deep, above top secret things that have been going on for decades. And you could just move that right over to the beings, cryptid side of things, and it's almost the same thing, but there's actually different folks, but same departments, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I could keep going on and on here, Chuck. That's awesome. That's really, really fascinating. Is there anything you want to talk about real quick here, Chuck, before we get off here? I want to tell everybody when you're going to, if you know a date, you're going to start your show up, how they can get a hold of you and all those things.
Okay. You can get a hold of me by, I guess the best way to get a hold of me is through my email address, and it is caschlabs@icloud.com.
Okay, so do that one more time.
Okay, it is caschlabs@icloud.com.
Okay.
And as far as my show goes, I took my show actually got taken away from me about 2 years ago. It's kind of a long story.
Okay.
But I'm in the process of getting all my shows back. And I'm hoping that within a week or two, I'm going to have that information. I'm going to have all my shows back, and I'm going to gradually start putting them back on and putting them on YouTube. So,
are you going to keep the same? I'm sorry,
same
Andrew.
name.
Go ahead.
Okay, Chasing the Beast is the name of the show, and it'll be back on hopefully pretty soon, within the next couple of weeks.
Is that Chasin or Chasing?
Chasing.
Chasing. Okay. Chasing the Beast. Got it.
Yes. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, and I would recommend everybody to listen to Chuck's show. It's a really good show. I've often wondered, what had happened. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, you bet.
It's, when you're getting close to the truth, weird things start to happen. Surprise, surprise.
That's exactly right.
And it's no mystery. It's just, what's the mystery is the people that are doing this. They obviously are doing it because they try to suppress this information. They don't want this information out, obviously. And there is very high level, top secret reasoning why they don't want this out. And so that's kind of what I'm delving into right now. And it's been on my heart, mind to do. So that's what I'm doing. But Chuck, is there any last words or anything you want to talk about here before we get off, buddy?
Just be safe out there if you're going out into the woods. I don't really worry about the Bigfoot stuff that much when I'm out there, but what I do worry about is all the other critters that are out running around, and cougars and wild hogs in our area. So just keep your head on the swivel and keep your eyes open when you're out there. It can get dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I tell people have contingency plans, and don't go by yourself. I've been by myself several times, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite, but you better tell someone where you're at, and you better have some way to protect yourself, and just be mindful of everything around you. Be aware. So, thanks so much, Chuck. I really appreciate you being on. It was an honor, and right after this, send me your email.
Yes, sir.
All right. You have a good evening, buddy. It was good talking to you.
All right. Thank you, Lance.
Okay. You're welcome. Good night.
All right. Good night.
Okay, guys. Incredible. I know it kind of went long here, but I hadn't had a chance to visit with Chuck in a long time. Fellow Oklahoma, and we see each other every once in a while during the Home and Hobby conference there, but I hope I can start seeing him a little bit more through the year through some investigations. Great investigator. He had a really good show there, but as you found out, and now as I found out, now I know why. These folks don't like you to get too close to the truth, especially when you start having evidence on your computer or your phone. So my suggestion is, if you get pictures, I probably interrupted him. We didn't really finish, I don't think. If someone happened to come to him and, he had a video of something, that was probably my fault of interrupting him. I should have kept quiet. That if someone comes to you and they have a photo, I would suggest real quick that they remove that photo or transfer it to something, not remove it, they transfer it immediately to a thumb drive, to an external hard drive, or something other than having it on their phone. And I would put it in more than one place. I would go dark for a while on just don't talk about it. Don't even verbalize it to anyone. And remember, when your phone is off, when this thing is not lit up, it's still on. Remember that. Even if you turn it off, it's still not off. The battery is still actively working. GPS is still working. Radio towers are still sending signals. So this is a listening device. Keep that in mind. Be careful that if you take a picture, a video, or something, transfer it immediately and take your phone and put it somewhere that you can talk freely in your home. Put this in a microwave or a Faraday bag. If you don't know what a Faraday bag is, get online, do some research. But you need, if something like that is a big deal and you saw something, you took a picture or you got video on your phone, immediately transfer it to something else. Immediately. Don't even talk about it till after you transfer that, because they're always listening. There is Google algorithms and different high-level software systems that pick up keywords that if they hear it while your phone is even off, you may get a knock at your door and have helicopters and all that whole mess. I know what this sounds like. I promise I haven't lost it. I'm just well aware and well informed. And I want you to be well informed too. That's why I'm talking about it. This was a great show. I can't wait to see if I can get, see if Chuck will let me get some pictures of some of the footprints and casts he's made. And I think they're really incredible. Dermal ridges. It's the ridges that are on our pads of our fingers and our toes. He's got prints that actually have that in there. And it's in there because these creatures, these beings, these Bigfoot, these Sasquatch are alive. They're alive and well, roaming across America. And that's a fact. So I hope you enjoyed this show, guys. If you have any comments, please leave the comments below. Comment on the show and comment on someone else's comment. Again, it helps the show grow even more, the way the Google algorithms are set. Share, like, and subscribe. And before I get off, guys, someone was asking about the shirts. Christmas is around the corner, And I got on, and we have a variety of colors. Real quick, here is the logo printed on the chest, and that one's called the Big Chest logo. Go figure. Then there's the small logo, the shirt here that's got the small logo that I normally wear. We have white, military green, black, navy, sand color, kiwi color, sport gray, dark heather gray, graphite heather gray. That's kind of a cool color, by the way. Forest green, dark chocolate, cardinal red, and the new color is maroon, and we have purple. The average cost is about $25. We have small all the way up to 5X. We had some people saying, Lance, you only go up to 3X, and I'm a big guy, so we have 5X. The smalls looks like they are at $18, and the 5X are around $31.97, just because there's a lot more material with the 5X. But the average cost is about $25. So we have all sizes. How you can get your shirt is real easy. You can click one of the links below, and it'll send you right to the store. You go to the store, click on that, and it'll go right to the shirts. If you would like us to carry something, we're going to redo some logos here soon for 2023. Got some cool things coming, really cool things. I think you guys would really enjoy because they're unique. But if you would like to see something that we don't have, leave a comment below. I'll look at them. In the meantime, guys, I appreciate you so much. Stay safe out there. And this is Lance with Monster 911. Take care.